Good day and welcome to the Marin County Fire Chief's historical website. Today we're going to be talking with Fire Chief Paul Smith of the Kentfield Fire Protection District, and Chief Smith is going to be telling us the history of the Kentfield Fire Department and how it came about. So with that I said, good day, Chief, and thank you for sitting down and talking to us today. And as the title says, how did Kentfield Fire Protection District come to be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been doing a ton of research on that.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, all the records are still here in this building in boxes. They never left. We built an archive, not a room like Larkspur has, but all our records are here. And I'd be glad to kind of walk you through where we are today.
Yeah, okay. Before we get to the district, do you know who protected the citizens of what we call in the county the Kentfield area? Who protected fire protection-wise before the district was formed?
A couple of things happened. There was a fire in 1891 on Mount Tam that made the papers in San Francisco and Chicago. And the mayor in San Rafael called for any available able-bodied man to show up and fight this fire, along with several hundred soldiers from the Presidio at San Francisco. So that's 1891.
Right.
Okay. The beginning of the 20th century, about 1900, this was still a very small village, very small village. And in 1908, there was a report of a fire in a, we'd call it today a taxpayer. It was a saloon. Kentfield at the time had like 7 saloons with apartment house or living quarters up above.
Right.
Now on the 4th of July, 1908, fireworks were going off. Imagine that.
I can't, no.
And landed on the roof of this house saloon. And the folks from town showed up with buckets and garden hoses to try to put the fire out. And an engine came from Ross, and I believe volunteer firefighters came from Larkspur. When did the Larkspur volunteers start?
1893.
Okay, so 1908 there was a hose cart in Larkspur. So they put the fire out successfully. They didn't burn the town down. And the next piece of correspondence I have to the Kentfield Improvement League, it was called at the time. There was no town, there was no post office, but the Kentfield area was developed due to the Kents that Mr. Kent came out from Chicago. He was owned a wholesale meat packing plant and was very successful, but had some sort of physical ailment. And so his doctor suggested he come west for the better climate, getting out of Chicago. So the Kents bought they started out with a couple hundred acres in what's now Kentfield and Kent Woodlands, and Mr. Kent eventually purchased all the way to Muir Woods, and he owned everything from Kentfield to Muir Woods over to Stinson Beach. It was a huge piece of property. And that's how, if you will, Kentfield came to be. Now where we are today at the corner of Sir Francis Drake and College Avenue used to be the county highway. County highway came up from Magnolia and out towards San Anselmo heading west.
It would be the road you take to Southern California. I mean, 101 is now 101.
Yeah, basically, 101 obviously wasn't there. And we were on the county highway, and they called it Kentfield Corners. Now, the big doings in Kentfield was the Ross Landing, which is right across the street from where the fire station is today. I believe there's a self-storage units down there now. But before the creek was
much deeper.
Much wider. Before they put the concrete channel in, they had a natural flowing navigable waterway that went all the way out to the bay, and that was what they call Ross Landing. So to bring us back to 1908, we had the fire at the bar slash home, and Citizens came out and did the best they could with water and buckets. Larkspur came up with their hose,
Probably a chemical wagon.
or chemical wagon,
Yeah.
and Ross came in. They had the
They,
old,
Yes, they had the 1910 Seagraves.
right.
Yeah,
So they put the fire out, and we have a letter of correspondence to the Kentfield Civic Improvement Club. So we got to think about a fire department. Ross, and said, hey, maybe we had to do something. They didn't have any volunteers. In 1920, as their fire department. And at that time, there was no county fire department as we know it today.
Right.
The Mount Tamalpais
fire district.
Fire
yeah,
District was very,
yeah. Spread out.
yep, and they were mostly concerned with, if you would, forest fires.
Yes.
We know it today.
Right,
The structure fire and protecting a town was not their forte.
right.
So, the city fathers got together and they asked the Marin County Board of Supervisors in 1920 to appoint 3 fire commissioners. And in November of 1920, the Board of Supes appointed 3 gentlemen, 3 residents here in Kentfield. Hecker, Ackman, and Neal were their names, on a fire committee, as fire commissioners,
Right.
sworn in, you know, as members of this new agency.
Right.
So the next year, in March of 1921, the Board of Fire Commissioners put on the local ballot whether or not, a proposal, whether or not to tax the citizens of this new fire district for fire protection at 50 cents a lot. 50 cents a lot a year.
Wow.
Now, the first year, 1920, they wanted $1 a lot. And after a year, for,
Wow.
for the next 5 years, it'd be 50 cents a lot. So in March of 21, they had a ballot. And it was the balloting was done at a local grocery store. And I have the ballot here. And the very first 2 names on the sign-in sheet for the citizens of the town were Mr. and Mrs. Kent. So we have their signatures along with the other almost 100 people that voted that day. And at the end of the day, typical of today, 105 people voted for the tax, and 2 people voted nay. So the measure passed,
Right.
and the fire district received authorization to collect funds. And in 1922, they went into service. They had their first calls. That being said, in 1921, the year the measure was passed, they purchased from a local real estate firm. His name was Lewis, and he had a real estate office right on the corner of Maple and what is now Maple and Sir Francis Drake, Maple and the County Road back then.
Right.
And he had made his money selling lots in Kentfield and moved back to Texas. So he had this building right here on the corner that was, for all intents and purposes, abandoned building, office building.
Right.
And it was about 20 by 20, wooden, single story. We have a picture of it, it'll be in my book. And it was a J. Lewis real estate company. And I have a picture of him in about 1910 with his horse and buggy in front of his real estate office. And that was the building that the Kentfield Fire Commissioner said, we'd like to buy this, it's a good location. So for a $10 gold coin, Mr. Lewis sold his property to the commissioners of the Kentfield Fire District. And that was their home until 1926. So they had a little, if you will, a barn. They took the real estate office and put some barn doors on the front and put a bell on top of it to call volunteers.
Right.
They, their first piece of equipment, I would say, was reported to be a hose cart a used hose cart they bought from Fairfax. And of course, as we've discussed before, their first piece of motorized apparatus was the 1916, I believe it was, chemical truck from Larkspur.
Yes.
So they had that chemical truck for, well, up until World War II. Their first fire apparatus, their own fire apparatus that they purchased was, we still have it here today, 1926 American LaFrance.
Yes. Right.
And the original bill of sale for that today shocks me even today. It's $5,400 for an American LaFrance in 1926. And that was the price of several homes at the time.
Right. Yeah.
So everything being in perspective,
Yeah.
you know, you could buy a nice home in Kentfield on a nice flat lot for around $2,000 in 1926. And they spent over $5,000 on their first piece of motorized apparatus that they bought themselves.
Yeah. Who was the first fire chief? Do you recall?
Yep, I do. When the fire district was first formed, they all the local men were part of the volunteers. They decided to be volunteers, and there were about a dozen of them, 14, 15, and his name was Rampe, A.W. Rampe, R-A-M-P-E.
Rampe.
Yep. And he was a local man. I think he owned a garage, as I recall. And he was a volunteer fire chief.
Okay.
So he served until, I know this, about 1935. I'd have to
Wow.
you know, double check that.
Good service. You did good.
Yeah, as a volunteer.
Yes.
And everything ran out of our little
Real estate
barn,
office, yeah.
our little real estate office until 1926.
Wow.
And then Fritz Rulin was the volunteer chief. 28. Rulin became the chief. Rampe would step down. Chief Rulin became the chief until 1933, when they appointed the first paid fire chief. So he was volunteer fire chief 1928 to about 1933, where they appointed him as a paid fire chief. I don't have any salary information on him, but he was the only paid person until 1943, when they hired a second employee.
All volunteers.
All volunteers.
Wow.
All volunteers.
And the main station, and with the place that we're sitting in today, was the second station that was torn down and built?
It's the third. Well, what happened when the real estate office was the first station for the hose cart.
Right.
And also stationed there was Larkspur's 1916
Model T.
Ford chemical wagon.
Right.
Well, when the 26 LaFrance came into play, they needed a big. So in 1926, construction cost was on the first branch of the Marin back in the day.
Right.
And the next, if you will, going up the line heading west, the Kentfield Fire District leased a bottom office space, if you will, probably about 10 by 10, to the Marin County Free Library.
Okay.
And it was open several days a week. And I believe the rental fee, $5 a year, Kentfield had its own library until 1968. And in the mid-60s, and you'll probably remember this, Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, what they called it the county road back then, was one lane each direction.
Yes, yeah.
All the way from the Greenbrae Y,
Yes.
all the way through.
Right.
So in order to accommodate 2 lanes heading west and 2 lanes heading east, the fire station was built right on the county road, and they had to move everything back 20, 30, 40 feet.
Right.
So part of the negotiation with the County of Marin and Public Works was us, not the fire station, but the rest of the properties on Sir Francis Drake, either take away some of their frontage or move or destroy the homes. So the Sir Francis Drake changed radically in the late 1960s, and if we take a look down Sir Francis Drake right on the boulevard today, heading towards Highway 101, you'll notice a lot of apartment houses on the north side of Sir Francis. And those all went in post improvement of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard.
When I came to Marin County in 1958 and went to going to the College of Marin, it was a two-lane road, a wooden bridge at the Greenbrae interchange, and a beautiful two-lane road to the college. And that's what's happened. Remember that, and I remember that construction. So continue. So when they got to this intersection, what happens?
When they got to this intersection, the county had negotiations with the Kentfield Fire District and gave them a land exchange, because on this site was Richfield Station from about middle of the current firehouse property, heading east towards the apartment house, where the apartment house is, the Richfield Station there. So that moved, all that got adjusted. The fire district traded the county land swap to, what did we move? Less than 100 feet east, and back about 40 feet, back away from the intersection about 40 feet.
Right.
And Chief Camp was the fire chief at that time.
Right.
And they built a very modern, tilt-up concrete construction, two-story fire station, state-of-the-art.
Absolutely.
State-of-the-art in 1968.
Yeah.
Concrete floors,
everything.
every office space, and as I mentioned to you yesterday or earlier, 1968 things were different in the fire service. For the men, Field Fire Department, we had interesting situations.
Yes.
Knock and lock.
Yes, that's right.
And we had female admin staff at the time, and one bathroom. Things were interesting. Things could be interesting.
Handicapped was this flight of stairs.
There was none of that. Of course, was code.
Yeah.
Which was interesting for me looking back in 1968. This building was fully sprinkled.
Yeah.
So there's things like the innovations that come along.
This building was the envy of the fire service in Marin County.
It was a beautiful building.
Beautiful. Still is a beautiful building.
building.
Still architecturally, it looks beautiful from the outside. At night, lit up, it's great.
It's great. Yeah.
Great. So
it's a great spot to work out of. I had the major impact, I would say, we both agree, is the traffic is just
it's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's gone up 2, 6, 8, 10-fold, whatever. At this intersection.
Yeah.
But I want to say we're out of the flood zone. We're in a great spot to respond, either east, west, or down the street. They couldn't have Kentfield.
Right, you're right in the middle of your district, just about it. You couldn't have measured much from the top of Kent Woodlands to down to Greenbrae.
Down to Greenbrae.
Yeah, just about it. I want to back up one moment because you mentioned Ross Landing was over here. Landing that's not in town of Ross.
Went to a map event at the Kent Library, Antique Kent Library, I think. Marin County Library.
Adeline Kent, historical room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did a thing on the maps, presentation on the maps of Marin County.
Right.
Fascinating. Dewey Livingston was part of that group. And this gal, Ann Ross owned from just past the College of Marin, west of us, all the way to about where St. Anselm's Church is.
Oh, okay.
So
Ross.
That's before they split it. And I understand Ross Landing was right across the street.
Yeah, no, people don't realize how deep. It's the same thing in Madrone Canyon. When the lumber companies came from Baltimore in 1848, the canyon, the canyon was 15 feet deep. The creek in what is Madrone Canyon was 15 feet deep. Now it's like, there's only like 3 feet of clearance. It's all filled with rock. When they cut the lumber, everything filled the creek up. So.
Yeah.
And that thing. So, well, I want to thank you for taking the time. And great history. We've had some great relationships with Larkspur and Kentfield, and we've had our jealousies, so to speak. But it's always been a pleasure to work with you guys.
Absolutely.
Paul, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, you
Thank
bet.